G'day guys, Socket here. Today we're going to continue on with our Room EQ Wizard car audio tuning tutorial series, and we are up to step 6, time alignment. Now this will be the first in a 3-part tutorial series looking at time alignment. We're going to start with measuring the speakers using the tape measure method. Then I'm going to show you how to do time alignment using the moving mic method and summation. And then finally, in the third video of the series, I'm going to show you how to do time alignment if you've done your measurements using sweeps and doing impulse and phase alignment. So 3 different ways of doing time alignment. But if you haven't already watched the video called The Language of Sound, I recommend you go jump back and have a look at that first. It covers a whole bunch of stuff on sound and phase and cancellations and impulse response shapes and stuff, which is I guess essential background because I'm not going to cover a lot of those concepts as I go through this tutorial because I've assumed that you've watched that video first. So I'll put the link down in the description anyway. So the first series we're going to have a look at is the tape measurement method. Now, while this is a standalone method and you can do your time alignment just using the tape measure, I recommend that regardless of which time alignment method you choose to go with, that you do this first, because it's important to have a starting point for doing your time alignment so you can measure your speakers using the tape measure method, and then you know that what your rough starting points are for your speaker delays. And it's also handy because you can use it as a way of double checking your measurements when you're doing summation or phase or impulse alignment. So if you know that your speaker is 3.4 milliseconds away and you get an impulse response measure that says, oh, you need to add 8 milliseconds of delay, you know that that impulse measure is not going to be correct because it's physically impossible to be that far out when you know your speaker is at a distance of about 3.4 milliseconds. So it's handy to double check the results that you're getting with your other methods. But guys, just like all of my other tutorials, I just want to point out that this is the way that I do time alignment, and I'm just sort of sharing that stuff with you guys as always. It's not the only way to do time alignment, and it's like, oh, but Socket, I don't do that, and I do this, and I measure this one first. That's fine. There are lots of different ways to get the same result, but this is the techniques that I use. I hope you find them helpful. But anyway, enough of an introduction. Let's get started with the tape measure method. Hey guys, so here we are back out in the garage again. Today we're starting with our time alignment tutorials, and it's another beautiful winter's day down here in Melbourne. So we're going to start with doing the tape measure alignment method. Now, I always take these measurements of the speakers, the speaker distance to the listening position, and the reason for that is regardless of whether I'm going to do moving mic or impulse time alignment or anything like that, I always measure my speakers using the tape measure method because it gives me a starting point for all my speaker delays, and it also gives me a framework for which I can just check my impulse and phase measurements and things like that to make sure that they logically make sense. And so that's just the way that I do things. If you want to skip ahead, and that's fine too, but that certainly has helped me out a heap. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. I've got some materials all set up over here to make up the measurement sticks and things that we're going to need. So let me show you how to do the measurements, and we'll catch up at the end to have a look at how the results turned out. Alright, let's talk about some of the materials that you're going to need. So we're going to need some sort of straight edge to be able to do our measurements with, maybe a bit of yellow tongue. I tend to use cardboard because it's cheap, and it's also pretty solid, but it won't damage your speaker cone if you accidentally press into it. You could also use, you know, a piece of straight wood or something, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, anyway, so something straight so that you can, you know, put one end on the speaker and the other end at your reference point, and then get a full measure or a proper accurate measure using, you know, like the measuring tape with, you know, flexible thing. It bends and stuff, and you it's really hard to get a decent measurement out of it. Or you might have, you know, one of these old school you know, solid measuring things. That'll work too, right? Yeah, so if you're going to make up cardboard templates or something, then you're going to need, you know, some cardboard and some sticky tape and scissors and all that usual cardboard engineering stuff. And then you'll need some masking tape, because we need to attach a reference point to the headliner, and you don't want anything damaging your headliner. So a bit of masking tape. Sorry guys, truck's going by. So a bit of masking tape will do the trick. You're going to need a pad, pen to, you know, write your measurements down, or, you know, someone to record your measurements. You need a marker so that we can mark the point on the on your straight edge for your distance, so you can measure that. You need some sort of measuring device, so you know, tape measure or something, so you can actually work out what the distance is once you have marked it on your straight edge. And then, you know, if you can go really fancy, right, optional extra would be one of these laser measuring things. If you don't want to, you know, go low tech with the measuring stuff, you can use one of these laser things. And then you need some sort of tape to stick to the grill of the speaker, so that, you know, you've got something for the laser to sort of bounce off. But, you know, not all of us can afford, you know, fancy stuff like that. So you know, if you're just a DIYer and, you know, don't mind getting a bit ghetto, then you know, the cardboard straight edge is the one I would recommend. Okay, so I'm doing a bit of cardboard engineering to make a big long straight edge, right, like this. So what I've done is just cut a strip of cardboard following the grain, and basically joined the two bits together just with sticky tape, right? And then I've run some extra sticky tape just to sort of stiffen it all up a bit, right? So this is just to do the big long runs. Now the thing about cardboard is it has a grain, right? You can sort of see the flutes sort of running up that way. So if you cut it this way, it's going to be, you know, much stiffer. If you cut it this way, with the across the cells, then you know, it's a little bit bendy, right? So cut that way, guys, and you'll end up with a much better straight edge. Yep, so to show you what I mean, this one is, you know, cut with the grain, no problems. This one cut against the grain, yeah, it's almost useless. So yeah, you're going to need a short one of these and a long one of these. Short one to do the closer speakers, and the long one obviously to do the speakers that are further away. Okay, well let's go take a look at where these speaker locations are. So starting with the tweeters and the mids up here on the pillars and on the dash. So this is the right hand side, and then of course over here on the left hand side, so the usual dash locations. The mid bass are down here in the kicks. So this is the left hand side, and if we go over to the other side and we pull off this cover, there's the other one tucked in under there. While we're in this location, we also have the front sub, so good old school Phase Aliante, doing front sub duties. And then if we just quickly look at the back, while we're here, we have the not even sure what they are, but anyway, some rear fill speakers, which we're not going to worry about during this tutorial. And then right round the back over here, we have a Hertz 250 sub, just in a sealed box, doing the rear sub duties. So that is all the speaker locations, and what we need to do is basically measure them all to a central point, here at the listening position, somewhere here, whatever. So we're going to have to make a marker to measure to. So let's go see how we do that. Alright, so more cardboard engineering, and so let me introduce you to my patented 3D space indicator, which we're going to attach to the headliner of the car so that we've got a point in space to measure to. And it's super high quality. Probably buy these at any of your local hardware stores, but it's essentially 2 bits of cardboard stuck together with sticky tape to form a cross. And then I have literally cut up a old coat hanger or anything stiff, and bend it a little L shape and sticky tape that in there. So essentially we can use some masking tape or something that's not going to damage your headliner, just to sort of lightly attach that to the roof, so we've got a single point in space that we can measure all our speakers to. Okay, so I've got that installed in the car now, so let's go have a quick look. Alrighty, let's just have a sort of peeky peek. Yep, here it is. So it's basically the coat hanger, and I have literally stuck it to the headliner using masking tape, and I basically put a piece of masking tape on each of these bits of cardboard so that when it was in the right position I could literally just flatten it out with my hand. And so I sat in the seat in my usual driving position and got to the point where the wire was pretty much on the tip of my nose, and I moved it back just a little bit so that I could stick it to the ceiling, and then I've literally just wrapped a piece of masking tape around the wire to indicate where my tip of my nose is, and it's pretty solid, right? So that's we just need a reference point, so hey, that's better than nothing. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually prepare the car for the measurements, because some of these speakers, like these ones over here, are going to be pretty easy to measure because there's a direct line of sight to the reference point, but some of them not so much. So even these front ones are probably going to be okay, but certainly getting to the back sub is going to be a bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is fold down all the seats and take the headrests off so that we've got a better chance of getting a direct measure, because a lot of the errors that occur when you're doing a measurement is when you're trying to go around corners and stuff. We actually want to be able to measure directly from the cone of the speaker to the reference point to get the most accurate measurement possible. So I'm just going to prepare the car and be right back. Okay, so we've got the car kind of all prepared. All I basically did was pull off the headrest and fold down the back seats, but yep, we can pretty much get a complete line of sight from that speaker, from those ones over there. These ones will be fine, and then down here to the rear sub, it's a pretty straight line. So yeah, it saves us having to try to measure around corners and onto the back of a seat, and then sort of adding numbers together. This is a much more accurate way if you can get a clean line of sight from your listening position to all your speakers. Now I will say, before we if you go to take your measures, this is 100 times easier if you've got a mate to help you. Buy them a beer or buy them lunch or something, but to have somebody being able to hold the straight edge right on the speaker, while you hold it to the point of reference and mark the straight edge is, as I said, much easier with two people than doing it by yourself. But anyway, that said, I don't have a mate to help me today, so I'm going to be doing this on my own. But let's get in and start taking some measurements. So when you're going to do your measures, make sure that your cardboard is cut, the end's cut nice and flat so you can get an accurate measurement. And just be careful when you're pressing your cardboard against the speaker that you're very careful so you don't damage anything. So because the sound wave comes from the surface of the cone, you want to get as close as possible. So in this case, I'm going to go onto the face plate of the tweeter, just being really careful, and then I'm going to measure down here Just going to measure down here to the marker, and you can see I've marked this before, and there's the measurement. Cool. Alright, now that we've marked up our little straight edge, we're just going to use a tape measure as always, and that looks to me to be about 83.6 centimeters, so 836 millimeters, right? Great, so that's our first measure. Alright, the next speaker I'm doing is the right mid, and so what we're going to do is once again measure it to our marker, but because it's a little bit longer and I'm here by myself, I don't have someone to help me, what I'm doing is from the corner, sorry, the middle of the grill, just here, I've just put a little bit of masking tape, very lightly, so we don't damage the grill or whatever, but it just holds it in place and lets me able to measure the other end, right? So then I can sort of move this into position like so, and then take my measurement. Right, so I'll do that and be right back. Okay, so let's have a look. That looks to me to be about 95.5. Let's move it back just a fraction. Yep, 95.5. And then I know that the grill is a little bit above the speaker cone, so I'm going to add another 5 mil on just to make sure that that's allowing for that little gap. So I'm going to make this measurement 96 centimeters. Okay, so that's the right tweeter and the right mid. Now we'll go off and do the right mid base. Okay, so for this one I've had to go with the big boys. I'm going from the edge of the speaker where the front of the cone is, right, not from the back of the speaker, so for the edge of the speaker, and I'm going all the way up without trying to bend it or hit the steering wheel or anything, and I've got a measurement there that we can now go and measure. Yeah, so it's a little tricky by yourself, but as long as you keep the cardboard straight, pretty as straight as possible, you'll get a nice, trying to avoid the steering wheel and all that stuff, you'll get a nice marker. Okay, so just measuring that one, and the result is difficult to see, but it looks like 122.6, so that will do. And what I've done is just marked a little arrow on the other end to make sure I remember which end I'm measuring this stuff from. Alright, so that's the right mid base. Okay, so I've done the tweeters and the mids on the passenger side, and now I'm going to do the front sub. And so what I've done is taken off the grill so I can get a proper measurement. Now, that's the great thing about using cardboard is as long as you're super careful, you can place it against things lightly without damaging them. So with the front sub, I want to go from the middle of the cone, and then basically come up here nice and straight. Don't want to hit the little measurement marker at all, and then you can sort of mark where the front sub is. So that's the front sub measure done. Alright, so that's the front sub measured up, and surprisingly they are all sort of in relatively not too far away from each other, so interesting. Okay, well next is the passenger side mid base. Okay, so now we want to measure all the way from the left mid base to this this central point here, but my little measurement stick's getting a bit bendy from overuse, but essentially we want to go from that edge of the speaker to the top of the measurement post over here. So let's have a quick look. Luckily we've got enough clearance to sort of get it over to here somewhere. Anyway, I've done a measure. It's a bit hard to film and hold this at the same time, so you get the general idea. So we've got that measurement, so just going to go and measure that up now. Alright, so that is looking like 150.4. 150.4. Whoops. So that so far is the furthest away speaker, 150.4. Okay, and so finally the rear speaker, which is the tricky one, and hopefully my little measurement tool will last. So this is a down firing sub, so yeah, the not going to be able to take it out of its cone, but the cone is somewhere, you know, so we're trying to take it from the middle of the cone, right? So this is going to be the roughest measure of all, but that's okay. Try to keep the measurement thing as straight as possible, but essentially go from the middle of your subcone like this to your measurement point, and do the best you can. All right, I'm just going to do that. I'll be right back. So what I've done is sort of tapered the end of the cardboard so that I can sort of get it in sort of as close to the center of the sub as possible, and then you know, from there trying to keep it as straight as I can to get a little measurement. So there's the that's the front sub done. Nice. Okay, so let's measure this rear sub. Make sure this is on the right edge. Yep, there we go. So what have we got? Here is the rear sub here. So that is, I'm looking at it upside down, 132.3. But it's a pretty rough measure, so 132.3 will be fine. And that is all the measurements. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. So that's the two little measure sticks together. We've taken a bit of a beating during this measurement system, but let's just have a look at where they all ended up. So surprise, surprise, the speaker that is the furthest away is the passenger mid bass by quite a long shot. I thought the rear sub might be the furthest away. Then the rear sub, left mid and tweeters, then the right mid bass, the front sub, and then way down here we've got the right mid, and the closest is the right tweeter. So why is it important to know which is the furthest speaker away? Because essentially that will be the speaker that has zero delay, because it will be, you know, it'll take the longest for the sound to get to the listening position, and of course all the other speakers will need to be delayed a certain amount to release their note at the right time, so it's all hitting you at the same moment in time. So there we go. That's my technique for doing manual measures. Yeah, I'm sure you've got your own technique, but yeah, it seems to work okay. So there you go, guys. That's how I do my physical measurements of my speakers, and as I mentioned earlier, I do that every time I'm doing time alignment in a new car. I always take the physical measurements first, regardless of what time alignment method I end up using. Now, some of you with sharp eyes would go, hey, yeah, Socket, but I didn't see you do the left tweeter or the left mid. Well, you are correct. I didn't include those clips in the demonstration, mainly because it was just too hard to hold the camera and do the measurements, so I kind of left them out, but you get the idea. But it doesn't really matter which order you do your speakers, as long as you measure them all, and as long as the most important thing is that the measurement is taken in a straight line between the speaker and the listening position, because that's the way sound travels, right? Sound doesn't take corners and stuff like that. It comes at you in a straight line, so that's the distance that you want to kind of capture. So the next question that you might have is, well, if I'm taking these measurements, just how accurate do I need to be? And the answer to that is somewhere between 1 and 3 centimeters is perfectly fine. And I know that I've had a lot of people come to me and say, oh, but Socket, it's a certain distance, we should measure to the absolute millimeter. And if you want to do that, that's fine. There's no harm done, but it's really not necessary. And let me explain why. We know that the speed of sound is a constant, and regardless of whether that sound is coming from a tweeter or a mid or a subwoofer, the sound wave will be moving through the air at a constant rate of 343 meters per second. So if you have a look at this table, you can see that we have on the left hand side milliseconds and its fraction of a second. So 1 millisecond is a thousandth of a second, and and so on and so forth. And then we have the distances that that sound wave will travel during that time period. So for 1 millisecond, the sound wave will have moved 34.3 centimeters. 0.1 of a millisecond, it'll be moving 3.4 centimeters, and at 0.01 of a millisecond, it's moved 3 or 4 millimeters. Now, our limit of human hearing is about 0.1 milliseconds. Now, yes, you can maybe pick up the difference between in 1 millisecond when you're clicking and doing your fine tuning when you're doing your time alignment. But if I played you a track that was at 3.11 milliseconds delay, and then I played you a second track at 3.12 milliseconds delay, I would almost guarantee you wouldn't be able to hear the difference between the two, unless you were a super highly trained audiophile. But so that's kind of like the limit. So at 0.1 of a millisecond, the sound wave's moving 3.5 centimeters in that time. So as long as you're within 1 to 3 centimeters, you're going to be able to tune your time alignment with an accuracy of 0.1 millisecond, plus or minus, which is pretty accurate. If you really want to be OCD and you go all the way down to 0.01 of a millisecond, which is 1/100th of a second, once again the sound wave is moving 3 or 4 millimeters for that time period. So this is why I say you don't need to be millimeter perfect, even at the very lowest levels that the DSP, the highest resolution that the DSP will let you enter in time, your time delays. The movement is still 3 or 4 mils, and that's why when I'm taking my measurements, it's a mil here, a mil there. It doesn't really matter, folks. Okay, so I spent a fair bit of time on that just to sort of help people understand, because it's a topic where people argue a lot about it. And as I said earlier, you can measure it if you want to go super crazy and measure it to the millimeter. Absolutely feel free. There is no harm in doing that either. Okay, so now that we have all of our measures, it's time to go plug them into the DSP. So let's go have a quick chat about delay, and then we'll open up the DSP and start putting in some measurements. Okay, so just a quick reminder about delay and the order in which to apply it. It is a topic that I have covered in depth in the language of sound video. But just another quick reminder, because it's something that people get confused about and can lead to all types of frustration when you're trying to do your time alignment. So here we have two speakers. They're both tweeters. In blue is the right hand tweeter, and in red is the left hand tweeter. Now I'm taking these measurements in a right hand drive car, so the right hand tweeter is closest to the listening position and the left hand tweeter is further about. If this was a left hand car, then they would be flipped, but bear with me. So if you think about it, the speaker that is closest to you is going to arrive, is going to arrive before the speaker that is further away, because the speaker that's further away, the sound has to travel more distance. And that's exactly what we can see here. The right hand tweeter is arriving at the listening position at 3.047 milliseconds, and I've just put the line on the peak of the impulse response. And so what that's telling me is that the speaker is about 1 meter away, and it's taking 3.04 milliseconds for the sound to travel from the speaker to the microphone. And that makes perfect sense. And so when I'm measuring the left tweeter, it is arriving later because it's taking longer for the sound to travel that extra distance. And so this is arriving at 4.137 milliseconds. Okay, so about 1.07, 1.08 milliseconds later. Because of the extra distance it has to travel, as I said. So that kind of makes sense. So if we want to time align these two peaks and get the two speakers playing together, we need to delay the closest speaker to us so that its response moves to the right and lines up with the red peak. Okay, we can't take time off. We can't magically make this speaker the sound travel quicker and make this speaker's sound arrive at about 3 milliseconds. We could, anyway, technically we can't do that. So we always need to delay the speaker that is closest to us and make it arrive later. So and the way we do that is by adding on delay so that these two peaks line up. And so, as I said, you could take this measurement, 4.14, and take it off 3.04 or whatever and do the calculation, but the more accurate way to do it is to set the cursor at T0 and then just measure this bit here. So 1.08 is the difference between the two speakers. So let's go pop that into the alignment tool and put in 1.08. Oops, 1.08. I'll make a copy of that and let's go have a look in the overlays. And now we can see, if I turn the blue one off, the right tweeter is now on top of the left tweeter because we've added enough delay to get these two lined up. Now, if I turn that off and turn the right tweeter back on again, let's say I accidentally put 1.08 milliseconds of delay on the wrong tweeter. What would happen? What would you see? So let's just close that. I'm going to flip these around, so make that one that and this one this, and I'm going to make that I'm going to add 1.08 onto the speaker that is further away from me. Okay, and that's now in bright green, and we go into overlays, and okay, so what's happened? The bright green is the one that the new measurement that we've just created, and you can see instead of that peak moving to there to the left, it's actually moved to the right because delay always makes the impulse response move to the right. So what we've done is we've simply added an extra 1.8 onto this impulse response, and we've made it 2.16. It's added that extra delay. So if for some reason your impulse responses are not behaving the way that you think they should or expect them to when you're doing this stuff, always remember to add your delay to your closest speaker, and that when you add delay, it will always shift the peak to the right. Okay, so look, I thought I'd just mention that because a lot of people do get confused with that, and they make mistakes like that, and they're wondering, what am I doing wrong? So hopefully that saves somebody a bit of time and trouble. Alright, with all of that out of the way, we're now ready to put our measurements into the DSP. Now I'm using the Helix Ultra. If you're using a different make or model of DSP, then the screens will probably look different, but there will be somewhere where you can put in your speaker delays. In the Helix, it's up here under the time tab, and we get this screen that we've sort of seen before. So here we have our outputs A, B, C, D, all the way down to the bottom, depending on how many channels your DSP has. I have mine set up so that I have my left speakers running down this side of the screen and my right speakers running down this side of the screen. So I have my left tweeter, my right tweeter, my left mid, my right mid, etc. And so because my right hand speakers are closest to me, it's this side where I'm generally adding delays. In the Helix, it gives you the option of either putting in your timing using what we call distance mode, so in inches or centimeters, or in delay mode, which is in time or milliseconds. Now, not all DSPs allow you to do that. most of them will require only allow you to put in delay mode. So if you've taken your measurements in inches or centimeters, you'll need to do a conversion into milliseconds to be able to put them into your DSP. But I'll show you how to do that in a moment. For the people that are using Helix DSPs, my suggestion is either do the conversion and use delay mode, or put in your distances in centimeters or inches using distance mode. But don't switch between the two once you've made a choice, because if you've put a whole heap of things in, in centimeters and then you switch to delay mode, it doesn't work the way you would expect. You'll end up stuffing up all of your settings. I've done a quick viewer's question on this if you want to understand why it works like that, but just take my word for it. You can't sort of flick between distance and delay mode in the Helix DSP. It doesn't work. So let's get on and plug in our measurements. As I said, we're going to use distance mode, and we're going to start with the left tweeter. So we're going to put in 123 centimeters. Now the thing with the Helix DSPs is you can't just sort of click on here and punch in the number, right? You've got to use these little slidey things, and the thing is that they don't give you exact numbers. So if we're putting in 123, I've got to slide it here and sort of click, and I can take a choice between 123.25 or 122.90. I can't select 123.0 exactly. So if I look at those two measurements, it's 122.9 is the closest of the two. So that's the one I'm going to stick with. All right, so that's the left tweeter done. Now on the right tweeter, we're looking for 83.6. So excuse me, 83.6. So that's pretty close. And then we just work our way down all the other speakers. So the left mid is 128.5. The right mid is 96. Oops, 96. 96.0. So that's about as close as I can get. The left mid bass is 150.4. 150.4, that's pretty close. The right mid bass is 122.6. Okay. G and H are my refills, which we are not covering in this tutorial. My front sub is down here on channels K and L, and so that's 120.3. Now, rather than putting it in twice, I'm just going to pop them both into delay group 1 so they move together, and so that's 120.3. Okay, and now the the rear subs, which I'll put into group 2, and that's 132.3. 132.3. Okay, that's as close as I get. So now that's all of the measurements entered into the DSP. Now I'm just going to do a quick logic check to make sure I haven't made any errors. So first of all, the left-hand speaker should be at a higher, it should be further away than the right-hand speakers. So 122 versus 83, 128 versus 95, 150 versus 122, and these front sub and rear subs. Well, the front sub's closer, so that kind of makes sense. All right, so that all kind of looks fine. So for the people that are using distance mode, we've kind of completed our input into the DSP, but we're not quite finished yet. For those people that have to use delay mode, let's go and look at how you do the calculations. Alright, well, we've covered this in depth in the language of sound video, but I'll just touch on it quickly again. So we know that the speed of sound is a constant 343 meters per second or 1125 feet per second, and so that means if you want to convert from your distances in centimeters to milliseconds, and you're in the metric system, you need to divide your distance in centimeters by 34.3, and the answer will be your time in milliseconds. And if you're in the imperial system, then you need to take your distance in inches and divide it by 13.4 to give your time in milliseconds. So let's take the distances that I had for my speakers, and I'll do the quick calculations. We'll have a quick look. Okay, so I've now taken the speaker measurements in centimeters and I've divided them all by 34.3, and now I have the results in time or milliseconds. So we've done the conversion, and so the results for the closest speaker is 2.44 milliseconds, which is the right tweeter, and then the speaker that is furthest away is the left mid bass, and that has a time of 4.38 milliseconds. And so I know that it's roughly every meter is about 3 milliseconds of time, so I can look at that quickly and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, the right mid bass is at 96 centimeters, which is almost a meter, and its time is 2.8 milliseconds. So that kind of all looks right. And so now we have our speaker measurements converted into time. But these are not delays. These are simply the time of flight from our speaker to the measurement for each of our speakers. And so we're not quite ready to enter them into the DSP yet. What we need to do is set our furthest speaker away at time 0 and then work out the delays for all our other speakers compared to the speaker that is the furthest away, and then we will have our delays. So let me explain what I mean by that. So if you recall earlier in the tutorial, we were talking about impulse responses, and we said, you know, when we have two speakers and, you know, the one's arriving earlier than the other, so, you know, this might be a tweeter and this might be our left mid bass, and so, you know, this signal is arriving at 1 millisecond, and, you know, this one is arriving, you know, a millisecond later, that we would have to add delay to the speaker that's closest to us to get them to be time aligned. And so this is exactly what's happening when we're looking at the millisecond conversions that we have in our table, that this is the speaker that's arriving the latest. So for our left mid bass, that was arriving at 4.38 milliseconds, and, you know, this might be our right tweeter that is arriving at, you know, 2.44. So what we need to do is make this speaker 0 time. We don't want to add any delay on it because it's already arriving late. We actually want to add delay to these other 3 speakers to get them all to line up with the speaker that is the furthest away. And so that's what we do when we go and do this next calculation to actually work out our delays. And once we have those, we can then put them into the DSP. So let's go take a look at that. So here are the calculations to work out the delays for each of the speakers using the left mid bass as time 0. So let me explain what's going on here. Now we know the left mid bass is the speaker that is furthest away, and it's the speaker where the sound wave has to travel the furthest distance and therefore has the longest time of flight at 4.38 milliseconds. So to make sure that all the other speakers are time aligned with the left mid bass, we have to add on a certain amount of delay to all the other speakers so that the sound waves are hitting us at the same time. And so what we're doing then is taking the time of flight for each speaker and subtracting it from 4.38 to give us the delay for each speaker. And so those values are in green, and these are the values that we're now going to plug into the DSP. So we go into the DSP, we go into the time tab, and now we start entering in our delays. So starting with the left tweeter, it is 0.79 milliseconds. So 6879, there we are. The right tweeter is 1.94. 1.94. The left mid is 0.63. So 6.3. The right mid is 1.58. 1.58. 78, there we are. The left mid bass is time 0, so it's the furthest speaker away, so we leave that set at no delay. Then our right mid bass is 0.81. Whoops, too far, way too far. 0.81. Our rear speakers we're not using. Our front sub is 0.87. So, oops, too far. There we, oops, 96. So we can't get 0.87. So I'm just going to go to fraction over. And then our rear sub is 0.52. 4852 can do that. And so now all of our delays are plugged in, and we're just going to quickly double check them. So here on the left hand side of the screen, the delay should be less than the speakers on the other side, because we want more delay the closer the speaker is to the listening position. So 0.79194, 63158, 0181, 52 on both of them and 88 on both of them. So all of our delays are now plugged into the DSP, and now we can go off and take some measures. Okay guys, so I jumped in the car and I took a bunch of measures after we put all the delays in. So I thought we'd just go through all this together. So excuse me, we got the left and right tweeters, the left and right mids, the, let's see, left mid bass, right mid bass, the front sub and the rear sub. So you know, they don't look too bad. A few bumpy things going on over here, but essentially they're following the target line, hitting 250, and then, you know, we've got this low frequency rise going on up here. So it looks pretty good from this perspective, but what we need to do is check the summation first of all for the speaker pairs. So, you know, the summation for the tweeters and then the mids and the mid bass, and to make sure they're summing up properly, and then check the crossover regions between the mids and the tweeters, and the mids and the mid bass, and so on and so forth, to see that they're summing up in the crossover region. And if all that checks out, then, you know, happy days. So let's get started. So we'll start with the tweeters. So here is the left and the right, and then I took a measure of the two playing together with correlated pink noise. No, it was correlated pink noise because I'm doing sweeps. So I took a measure with the tweeters playing together, and you can see that they're, you know, summing up quite nicely. You know, at this point here at 3,500, you know, we've got 95 versus 91, so a good 4 dB. Yeah, so that looks like they're time aligned pretty well. So if we go to the next one, which is the mids, left mid, right mid, same type of thing, a little bit of a chippy chop going on through this area here, but when I sum them together, you know, they didn't sum very well. There's cancellation going out here. They're kind of breaking even through this point. A bit of addition through here. So something's not quite right there. So what I did was I flipped the polarity on the right speaker, and I got this result. So once there it is, it's summing up nicely through here. It's a bit choppy through here, but, you know, summing up. And when you look here, what's happening is we know there is some cancellations from my mids that are positioned behind my tweeter speaker pods, and as the sound waves hit the back of the tweeter pods, it's causing a cancellation, you know, in this area and in this area. And we tried to EQ that out and avoid it, but you know, clearly that hasn't, you know, I mean, it's just not working. So you know, I'm stuck with dips at these two locations. Unless I do something physically to relocate those speakers, or, you know, some sort of treatment. So, but certainly compared to the other measure, this purple measure, it's a vast improvement. So flipping the polarity on the right speaker seems to have fixed that. So that's great. So we'll move on to the, let's see what's next, the mid bass. So here was the left and the right mid bass. I didn't get around to sort of fixing that little slope there that we that I sort of left a little gap in when we were doing the EQ work. But anyway, that's still there. That's fine. And so I did played both mid bass together, and I got a massive cancellation through here. So once again, I fiddled around and played with the polarities, and I found that I needed to flip the right mid base, and bang, bang, completely summed up through the whole area. So that was fine. So then I went to the front sub and the rear sub, played them together, and they summed up nicely through this area here. So that was all fine. So that means that when I'm sort of, what have I got turned on there? So I had the two tweeters, and then I had the polarity flipped on one of those. Oh no, I didn't. It was just, they were fine. Then I had the two mids, and I flipped the polarity on the right. That gave me summation through there. I flipped the polarity on the right mid base, and that gave me summation through there. And the front sub and the rear sub were summing up just fine. So now I've got my final, final curve that's kind of looking like that. So, happy days. Now what I would need to work out is the left and right sides summing up through the crossover regions? And because everything else is summing up, it should. So let's have a look. So we had the left tweeter and the left mid, and then I measured those playing together, and through this crossover region you can see that we've got, what's it, 89 through to 93, so about 4 dB of summation. Looks perfectly fine, so we can get rid of those. I looked at the right tweeter and the right mid, played them together. Once again, bit of a dip here, but I'm not sure what's going on there, but yeah, it wasn't too bad. So I'll take that as okay. Then what was next? Then we moved to the mids. That's right. So let's have a look. We had the left mid and the left mid base. Here we are. And we measured the sum of those two, and that's summing up nicely through there, so no problems at all. We then did the right mid and the right mid base. There it is. Summed that up, and yep, not as good as the other one, but still summing up, so that looked fine. And then finally we did the left mid base with the front sub, and we measured that, and that was adding up nicely, so no problems. And then we did the right mid base with the front sub, and that was also adding up, no problems at all. So the fact that everything was adding up meant that it all seemed to be pretty well time aligned, and so I would call that tune pretty much done at this stage, because we still have the fine tuning to do, but certainly the time alignment at this stage is done. So just to wrap up this tutorial, I just wanted to do a quick check to see how close we got using the tape measure method versus some other methods such as impulse and phase alignment. Now I did these measurements, the time alignment measurements, using the analog mic with sweeps, so I have some impulse and phase information in the measurements. If I'd used moving bike method, I could have taken measurements and did the same thing with checking the summations and stuff, but I wouldn't have phase and impulse information to look at. But in this case we do, so we may as well take advantage of it. So let's pop into the overlays and take a quick look. So we'll start with the impulse, and we'll have a quick look at the tweeters, and they look pretty damn close on top of each other, the left and right. They are, if I just put my cursor on the peaks, 1.11 versus 1.09, so 0.02 of a millisecond out of time alignment, which is insignificant really. So let's go and have a look at the phase. So left and right, blow that up a little bit, and we're not really interested in anything under about 2K. And I always look at about the 8,000 Hertz mark for tweeters, and you can see here like the phase is bang on each other, so That's pretty good. So back to the impulse, let's have a look at the mids. Okay, so they look a bit messier. They're in, the polarity is right because they're both, going down with the first impulse. The two peaks are a little bit, not quite in or out. So what is this? This is 700 microseconds versus 103 microseconds. So it's 600 microseconds out. So what's that point? I can't even calculate that. That's 600 millionths, right? So if we sort of zoom out a little bit and actually got into milliseconds, it's not far out at all. So let's go and have a look at the phase, and we need to select the mids, left mid, right mid, and what is going on. 20 to 20. And let's just zoom out a little bit. So we're not really interested in anything under about 100, and we're not interested in anything above 2000. So it's kind of like this area here that we're interested in. And so through this period, from about 150, 200 through to about 500, it seems to be going okay. So 104 versus 60. So about 60 degrees in phase, and it gets better, and then it goes nuts at about 500. It spikes and goes crazy everywhere, and sort of settles again around about 2.5. So if we have a look at the SPL at what's happening with those mids, the frequency response at about 500, this is where we've got this cancellation, everything's going nuts, and here's this other dip cancellation going on, and by 2.5 it settles down again. So what's happening is these cancellations are causing the phase in this area to be all over the shop, and there's not much we can do about that because it's physically related to our speaker locations. But where it is pretty flat, we're pretty much in phase, so that's great news too. So let's go and have a look at the mid base, and phase doesn't really mean much at this point. Impulse doesn't really mean much unless we go and change to a filtered IR, but it's hard to do with speaker pairs. So let's just have a look at the phase. That's more interesting. So the left mid bass, right mid bass, it's playing sort of let's say 100 down, so we're kind of interested in this bit here, and once again the phase is tracking along pretty well, 50 to 31, so within 20 degrees of each other. That's perfect. So let's go have a look at the next, which is the front sub and the rear sub, right? So front sub, rear sub. Once again, we're interested in basically where they're crossing over, so it's this area here, and so it's in phase all the way through here, no problems at all. It's 181 versus, so it's 40 degrees, so it's actually in phase all the way through the zone in which they're playing. So that's I'm pretty impressed with that. That's really good. So when I then spent a bit more time doing some tweaks and some very fine tuning, it turned out that I was really only adding 0.1 or 0.2 of a millisecond to some of the speakers to get it perfectly time-aligned after my fine tuning session. So what this tells me is that the tape measure method can give you a great end result without the need to do a whole bunch of phase and impulse alignment and stuff like that. So guys, I hope you found this interesting. If you're going to have a go at using this technique, I hope you end up with a really great tune. So once again, if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode.